Welcome to this special broadcast from Tillotoma Foundation on the on-ground situation in Ukraine, particularly from the perspective of Ukrainians. I'm Soham, Director of Tillotoma Foundation. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, or the special military operation as it is termed by the Russian authorities, began on the 24th of February 2022. Since then, the military conflict in Ukraine has evolved into a severe humanitarian crisis with global geopolitical and economic implications. The war has so far seen rampant usage of heavy weaponry, including cruise missiles, tanks, heavy artillery, etc. The war has led to an exodus of refugees to adjacent European countries. Today, to discuss the on-ground situation in Ukraine, I have with me prominent Ukrainian geopolitical experts, Nataliya Butyrska and Tetiana Shevchuk, both of whom are presently in Ukraine. Thanks, Nataliya and Tetiana, for joining me here at this discussion in such a critical situation. I also have with me Ambassador Achal Malhotra, Distinguished Fellow South Caucasus at Tillotoma Foundation. Let me begin with Nataliya Butyrska. Nataliya, if you could tell us a bit about where you are. I hope you're safe, and what is the situation on ground?
Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for invitation and the interest to our situation, because the situation in Ukraine is very strong, and I think that all people and lots of countries should know what is the situation, and I think that your help, your understanding of situation can help us to resolve it and to reach the peace. It's very important for Ukraine because lots of civilians died. And for today, about 100 children died, and about 100 children was injured. It's very strong because Russia military couldn't get blitzkrieg as they wanted to have to reach to Kiev and change our government for 1 or 2 days. But Ukrainian army and Ukrainian people are still fighting for our independence, for our sovereignty, and for our country. It was really unthinkable. Yes, relations between Ukraine and Russia was not easy because if you know, Russia annexed our territory, but Ukraine government and Ukraine people didn't want to have military conflict, and we didn't think about military invasion to the territories which Russia occupied, because if you know, Russia is a very big country which focused on their military power, but Ukraine is not so big country, and we didn't thought about this way. But Russia started war. How it was in the evening? In the morning at 5 o'clock. I woke up because I had conference with my colleagues from Pakistan about development, about relations. And at that moment, I heard bombing of our city of Kiev. And I realized that war started. After that, yes, I had this conference, and then we started thinking about how to do, because in this situation, people couldn't understand how to deal with this, because I have a family, I have a son, and we live in the house, in the private house, and in our house is underground. So we use this underground for 1 or 2 days, but our house is very close to the places like Irpin, Bucha, which was completely destroyed by Russian army. So we left all our things We left all our life in Kiev and evacuated 300 kilometers to the countryside now. But I couldn't say that we are safety, because all the day we have signals in sirens that Russia flights, Russian missiles are reaching to the cities which are near our countryside. This is the situation. But 20 days. Today is 20 days since the war started, and you know, I don't have any fear, because I realize that I don't want to leave my country. I don't want to be refugee, and now I think that I will fight, but I couldn't use weapon. And I couldn't be a military, but I can do it using information. And I saw that this chance which you gave us to speak about situation and to tell us about our feelings, it's very good help for us. And thank you very much. And then about countries and about reaction to the situation in Ukraine. The most important power in Asia, which can influence on President Putin and Russia at all, I think, is China, because President Putin before war stayed with Xi Jinping, and they had the document about how they are looking at the international relations and about how what should be done. And after that, President Putin started war in Ukraine. And I think that Xi Jinping, like a president of China, like a global power, should influence and should speak more loudly about this situation. Because Ukraine is country very friendly and very peaceful for China, and we had good relations for 30 years. Yes. Also, Ukraine is a global provider of agriculture products, and you know that now we should stop this war and to start our job, because the war, because the world will, because the problem with products will be very big. And also, I think that as a global power, China should to show that to not only speak about this and show that peaceful resolving is very important. About in other countries like Singapore, Japan, and South Korea, they are partners of the US, and they helping us. They sending good signals for us, and I would like to ask India also. It's a very important regional power. Not to choose Russia on Ukraine, but India is very important partner of Russia, and I think that Indian politicians can help us to resolve this problem, because today is important that world and countries can speak about this and try to help to resolve it.
Thank you so much. You really highlighted the situation on ground, of course, the traumatic situation that you yourself faced, and of course, the response of the various Asian powers. But I think what we have seen so far is that there hasn't been that sort of restraining effect by other powers on Russian, and Russian Federation has continued to with its operation. It has not stalled it. So given that, since you talked about both about China as well as other powers, so I would like to ask Tetiana, what do you see about the situation?
Dear colleagues, hello. Thank you very much for inviting me and and Nataliya and for organizing this discussion. I think that Nataliya indeed provided quite an encompassing overview of what is going on here on the ground. I myself became a refugee in a known country just 4 days ago. I was lucky enough to get out of the occupied region where we got to. We were surrounded by tanks, but by bombing, by artillery shooting. And not all people escaped from that region. We were lucky enough with my sister to get out of there. So now we stay in the western part of Ukraine. And all this, so I would just say that this situation was on the one hand totally unimaginable, because so many people were preparing for war or could predict it. Still the behavior of Putin and of Russian army is completely out of any sane mind, because at some point of time it becomes even unclear what is exact the purpose of this war, except of only one, to destroy Ukraine completely, because they claim that their goal is to damage a military infrastructure. But what you say in reality is you see completely different things, because they shoot kindergartens, they shoot schools, they kill civilians, they kill innocent people. Today in the morning, sitting here in the western part of Ukraine, I received a message from my friend that a picture of a burning house, building of 9 floors, completely on fire. And this house is just in front of my school where I went to, and 5 minutes walk from my house. And I'm asking myself and other people why this should happen, why these people should suffer all this, for which reason. And this is not critical military infrastructure. This is just has nothing to do with that. And killing civilians, it's all the war crime. It's not. It lies somewhere out of the any rule of law and anything. So this is a bluntly crime, and it has to be punished. And Putin showcases him as an international terrorist. This is the only definition which suits and can somehow describe the status of this person. So regarding the help and the support that we get, of course, many people, by seeing these horrible pictures, of course, they show a lot of sympathy, and many people provide some help. So we receive from many countries of Europe, we receive so much help, and it's a humanitarian help, also some military help that we got from some countries. Also, a lot of money transfer was sent to Ukraine. But this is only the things that may somehow ease the destiny of the people here on the ground. But basically, this is not really a solution to the problem. And I think that the reaction of in general is quite a soft one, and I don't see. So this is something. I mean, the things that are going on are so extreme that I cannot imagine what more extreme can happen, so that it causes more stronger reaction from the other side. And also the fact that Russia allowed itself to behave this way already is a very worrying signal that it doesn't see any factor which may restrain her from doing all this. Even recently, so I think the first week of the war, I don't know if you are aware of that, but they seized the atomic station in near Chernobyl, and they cut off the electricity. And then only a few days ago, we received that electricity was restored, but the people who are taught to operate this atomic station, they are for already third week are kept as sort of prisoners. They are lacking any proper food. So there is like a very hard, strong environment in which they are kept. So they're tired, and they are highly probably are not able to operate the station in the way it should be. So it's really a threat of another Chernobyl explosion, and world has not yet recovered from the previous one. And I cannot imagine what should happen so that all this would be reacted properly. Before the wars started, there were many talks among analysts and also on every level about the possibility of this war. And there was, for example, an argument that this war is basically impossible because at the very first moment when Russia will do anything like this, the SWIFT account, the SWIFT system will be just, so the Russia would be just cut off from SWIFT. Its financial system will be stuck, and it will be not able to conduct any war. And this argument was vital among the analysts, and we were thinking that indeed it's unimaginable, and indeed this reaction would follow. But when the situation came, and we see that the war already started, what developments we saw around the SWIFT? We saw that 4 countries in Europe were blocking the decision of the European Union to impose this SWIFT ban to Russia, and that Germany, Italy, Hungary, and Cyprus were voting against. So it took time and enormous effort of Ukrainian diplomats to persuade them to implement this ban. And only after some time this was done, and also not, but then also not entirely. Some banks keep operating there. So we see that it doesn't work. And I really don't know what has to happen so that Russia will be stopped. And now I think that because they lose war in some case in Ukraine, because our people and our army are very active, they do not want, as Nataliya said, they many of them do not want to be refugees. They stay on their land. They are ready to protect their country. And you see that very little was, that Russia was able to do very little. So only one city, Volnovakha, was captured entirely by Russians. The rest is still defending, the other cities still defending themselves. So I think this was a very big frustration to Russians. And now when they see that it's not that easy to occupy Ukraine, to get Ukraine, they're trying to just to cause as much damage as they just can reach. And this is the worst that may happen, I guess.
Thank you. You laid out a detailed case of the situation as well. So I just wanted to ask you a follow-up question, a quick response from your side. So do you think that the European response that came was enough? I mean, did the West do enough for Ukraine at the moment, and what else can they do, or what specific, I mean, why weren't the so-called sanctions not that much damaging as they were being claimed when they were being used?
Is it
Yes, maybe Nataliya can ask first, and then I will add also my my part to that.
Now, all European countries recognize what is the country of Russia and what and about the problems which Russia can do. But the problem is that European countries gave Russia this instrument when in 2028 year they didn't react to the annexation of Georgia territories. And then annexation of Crimea was a very big win of Russia, because European countries, they put some kind of sanctions, but it was very easy sanction, and they show Putin and the Russian government that they show, and they gave them to think that European countries are very weak, and their reaction is very weak. And after that, Russia they make Moscow's try to do what we can see now, the war, real war. Now they are helping us and they giving weapon, but the war started, and the problem started, very, very big problem started, and it's very bad, because they should do it in starting of Georgia war and starting of 2014 in Ukraine when Russia annexed Donbass. But European countries wanted to do business as usual, and they bought lots of energy, lots of gas, oil from Russia. It gave them lots of money to make weapons and to prepare for the war. And now the Russia government and media are talking about not only about war in Ukraine, but about war in other European countries. That's
right.
why Poland, yes, Latvia, Lithuania are very worried about the situation, because it could be reality.
Right. Tetiana?
Yes, so I agree with Nataliya that since this already happened, it has its deep causes and roots, and it's very difficult to say now how to stop a crazy international terrorist who has atomic bombs in his responsibility. But definitely the response has to be more elegant. And regarding this, so we desperately need help with in the sky. So we ask NATO, and our diplomats convey the message that NATO should close the sky about Ukraine, because on the ground our army is strong, and we have we prevail on with Russians. And there we are able to protect ourselves, but what their advantage is, it is the sky, because when they bomb us from the sky, we cannot do anything about that, and that's why we ask to shut the sky above us, and then on the ground we will defend ourselves. So these talks are going on now. There's a petition that was signed, and and many diplomats and our president is also, he conveys this message and he tries to persuade NATO to do this, because this story doesn't have a positive outcome, and the longer it takes and the more difficult decisions would have to be taken in the future. So the sooner we will stop this, the sooner the better, the less price I think would be paid for this. And also regarding the sanctions, there are a huge amount of these sanctions imposed, and I think that and many international companies left Russia, and I think all what rest there need to leave, and to make Russians in Russia try to feel the consequences of this aggressive behavior of Russia, because they never felt that. They said they are okay whatever Russia does. So this, I think, is a very good moment when they can feel themselves, and they can demand and ask on that their government and their president, and try to understand that this is maybe the cause of all their suffering. So I think this is something helpful, but it has to continue and to be more harsh.
Thank you so much. I'll come back to Tetiana and Nataliya with more discussion on this crisis and its implications. But let me now turn to Ambassador Achal Malhotra, who is a distinguished fellow for South Caucasus at the Tillotoma Foundation, on his analysis of the situation and how what we can look forward in the future, given that there is intensifying battle going on. Also, in light of the on-ground observations that have just been shared by Nataliya and Tetiana, if you can make an analytical observation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Soham. First of all, allow me to address the young ladies, Nataliya and Tetiana. I must express my sincere sympathies with the people of Ukraine. I'm really at pain to see whatever is happening in Ukraine at the moment. You know, there is an immense loss to the property and the life, and the way destruction is taking place. It might take many years for the reconstruction. And even if we are able to reconstruct the infrastructure, the kind of pain which the human beings will go through, it will be very difficult to do anything about it. Already, I think over 2 million people have been displaced, and God only knows under what conditions they are living and how soon they will be able to come back. Now, coming to the present situation, I think in order to understand our given situation, it is very important to have a very brief historical perspective of the historical background as to why this has happened, what has happened, and who is responsible for the kind of war that we are witnessing today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you allow me to say so, I would say that almost everybody, every party to this conflict has gone wrong somewhere or the other. First of all, I must also clear that in my perception, this war is not between Russia and Ukraine. Actually, this war is between America and Russia, the West and the Russia. And I won't say that Ukraine is being sacrificed, but fact of the matter is the real cause behind this war is the tug of war between the two powers. Now, historically, in 1990s, when the USSR disintegrated and we had 15 independent republics coming up, I think the rationale of having NATO was lost meaning, because Warsaw Pact was dissolved. Ideally, NATO should have also been disbanded, and a new security structure for Euro-Atlantic should have been devised, in which Russia should have also been involved. Had this been done, I don't think a situation like this would have arisen, or a situation like this which arose in Georgia, even that would not have arisen. And we don't know what is in store for all of us in future. So, but that didn't happen. Not only NATO, I'm not very sure whether there is a written commitment from NATO or was it only a verbal assurance from NATO that they will not expand eastwards and come closer to the borders of Russia. But all that we know for sure is that between 1999 and 2004, as many as 14 countries, which were the earlier, which were the members of earlier Warsaw Pact or former Soviet republics, they were incorporated into NATO. And NATO, has almost encircled Russia. For the first 10 years of its existence, the Russian Federation was relatively very weak, could only make noises, but did nothing on the ground. But with the advent to power of President Putin, I think he has not been taking it lightly, particularly after 2008 April, when NATO announced that Georgia and Ukraine will be the members of NATO, although they did not specify the dates. We all witnessed the Georgia-Russia war in August, which lasted for 7 days, and the result was the recognition of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, the two breakaway regions of Georgia, as independent states by Russia. And in the last 14 years, Russia has consolidated its positions in those two breakaway regions. 2014, we all know how it happened in Crimea. And on both these occasions, the NATO and the Americans, they were all onlookers. I have served as ambassador in Georgia, and I can tell you, President Saakashvili was a blue-eyed boy of President of America and the European leaders. And he had counted too much on support from America and Europe. And he had made some adventurous move in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. But when it led to a full-scale war, nobody came to the rescue of Georgia at that point of time also. I'm talking about 2008. And therefore, there was a lesson to learn from history as far as the American and the Europeans' behavior is concerned. Now, coming to the other player, which is Russia. Well, I think I cannot but agree with those who say that every country has sovereign right to choose its partners, alliances. If Ukraine wanted to become a member of NATO, fine. That's okay. But then there is another principle which is called the principle of indivisible security. If by Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO and bringing NATO to Russia's doorstep ensures the security of Ukraine to a certain extent, it endangers the security of Russia on the other hand. At least the perception is that in Russia that, my security is endangered. If I were to explain it in a very, very layman's language, you have a sovereign right to repair and renovate your house. But if in the process you are damaging the foundations of your neighbor's house, then the neighbor has also the right to protest. But where Russia went wrong is that he chose finally the military means to assert its point of view. And that is what has led to the war, the bloody war, which in 21st century should not be acceptable. But unfortunately, it is happening all over the world, as the United Nations, supposed to be, an umbrella organization of 193 countries, has a very poor track record in being able to control these situations. Unfortunate. Now, coming to Ukraine, I think Ukraine put all its eggs in one basket, and the basket was West. And as my young ladies, on our panel, you can discern from what they have said that what they are doing is far less than what Ukraine's leadership, probably or the people of Ukraine, had expected from them. And since they are not living up to the expectations, the situation is getting from bad to worse. Now, let me emphasize one more point. Who is gaining from this scenario? You see, ultimately, the whole thing is working to the advantage of America. Any day, America would like to see a Russia which is weak economically and also militarily. By invading Ukraine, Russia has given an opportunity to Americans and Europeans on a golden platter to come and react, and they have justifiably, in public opinion, imposed severe economic sanctions on Russia, which they were waiting for some time to do. They have done it in the past also. Now, what they are doing is they are trying to isolate Russia diplomatically, economically, and they want Russia to be out from the global financial systems, basically to cripple Russia's economy to the extent possible. And I dare say that longer the military conflict continues in Ukraine, it again is going to the advantage of Americans, because every day war is also costing enormous expenses to Russia, and this will further weaken Russia also. So we must understand this whole game plan. And this is what is happening. I mean, this is so far what is happening, and my perception of how it happened, what led to a situation that we have today, whether we could have averted it or not. But more important is, how do we get out of it? That's more important. By available indications today, Russia is hell-bent to, as they say, they will finish. They are giving the impression that they are also ready for talks. There have been some delegation level talks. There are talks between the two foreign ministers, but simultaneously they are going ahead with their end objective, which is to somehow or the other try to subjugate Ukraine or make Ukraine kind of accept that there will be a buffer zone between Russia and NATO. And to the extent possible, they would also like to consolidate their control over the eastern part of Ukraine. I believe there are reports that even Kherson has declared itself as an independent republic and joined Luhansk and Donetsk. So Russia's end plan, game plan is also clear. America's game plan is also clear. So young ladies, Ukraine has to decide, are you playing into the hands of one? Are you suffering at the hands of the others? And you have to take a decision how to get out of this situation. I can assure you that I appreciate the kind of resistance as patriotic people of the army and the common man on the street is putting resistance to an outsider or invader. But the point is, all your friends in the West and Americans, they will continue to pour in money, continue to provide you with weapons, but will not come to fight this war on your behalf. And who will suffer at the end? You have to take a decision. You are a sovereign country, sovereign people. So I can't recommend what you should be doing, but this is how I look at the whole scenario. Who's being smart and who's suffering, and what are the designs of Russia. So I can only hope that sooner or later wise sense prevails, and to begin with, at least there is a ceasefire, and then the two parties can sit on the table, and I personally would recommend don't count on any mediation from anywhere. Everybody has a bias against or in favor. So let it be Ukraine and Russia as two equal partners sit together and sort it out in a way that ultimately it is a positive and a win-win situation. So I would like to conclude my remarks at this point of time, but I will be very happy to respond to any of the queries which you may have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ambassador Malhotra, for your detailed analysis. I want to come to Tetiana, that what are the, and also Nataliya can come in also on this, that given that the peace talks are going on, so has there been any indication from the Ukrainian leadership that they are willing to give up their demand for, or their aspirations for NATO membership? And also, what other concessions or what kind of agreements do you foresee, do you hear from your sources, etc., that are being made, so that an agreement can be made and a ceasefire can happen or peace may happen?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. And also, before asking, I would like to, I will be glad to also provide some remarks in response to what Mr. Ambassador had said when he was providing his interpretation of this of a broader geopolitical picture of why this was happening. There were some moments that caused some questions from my side, and also I think would cause from some other people if they would be listening to these arguments, because Mr. Ambassador, for example, you mentioned that if someone threatens the foundation, then it is just, I was just wondering if, so what are the foundations of Russia? Russia it's in imperialism, and it's a country that only wants to deny the identity and the culture of its republic, so to say, which hates Ukraine since it's through the history. So this is not, it's not a choice for Ukraine. And I think India also knows what does it mean to be under rule of a stronger and older brother. So I think that here we should share a lot of understanding. And it's not about Ukraine never occupied any meter of Russian territory. We never claimed any territory. We never wanted to rule at some other lands except of our own within our constitutionally defined border. And this is what sovereignty and rule of law really means. So I think when you are talking about foundation of Russia, it's very important to elaborate and also to bring the definition, what are the foundation of Russia. Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, Putin, they're all on the same board. So this is a very important moment which has to be highlighted as well. And if you offer Ukraine this future, we have already the answer. And you said also Ukraine has to decide. So it's also maybe, I don't know, information was not delivered here or any other reason. Ukraine already made its decision, and it made it more than one time, because first Ukraine made its decision to be an independent sovereign state in 1991 when the first revolution took place. Then in 2004, Ukraine again decided and again made a choice to join the European Union and to define its own vector and its own future and its own values. Then in 2014, Ukraine again decided and made its choice. And now In 2022, Ukraine again decided and made its choice already. And also even in our constitution, the European vector of integration is ingrained in the constitution. So Ukraine decided already, and this is not a question to come back to again. It's just a fact and also an information. And also it posed me a question why, when you were referring to history, why you started to talk from the moment of post-Soviet countries that were, so to say, taken by NATO, because these post-Soviet countries were taken by Soviet Union initially. So if you see more years ago, and for example, in 1988, when Czechoslovakia was invaded by Russian tanks, the same as Ukraine now, it was not its choice to become a Soviet republic. So these countries were just restored their independence, their sovereign countries, and they made their choice. And Ukraine's choice is for democratic world. Russia is a corrupted, kleptocratic country. This is not what we want. We want to fight corruption. We want to live according to democratic values and where human rights are respected, and not as in Russia. And no one would choose this. So I think this is important to know and to see at the whole picture. And if you refer to history, then to take the whole and not since particular moment only. So this is my answer to this. And regarding the question of our moderator, it was about, you asked...
I asked about the peace talks.
The peace talks, so from the initiative of President Zelensky, the negotiation group started this peace talks, and they're also with the Russian side. So it was already 5th round of these negotiations, I guess. It's the latest information that I got. Maybe I may miss some latest updates. Sorry, but it just continued to going on, and yet we don't really see the real results of that.
Thank you so much. Nataliya, would you like to comment on the peace talks aspect and also in general?
Russia is trying to put their Russia is a country which couldn't do compromise with another countries. And, Putin thought about denationalization, which means change our government of democratic country where people elected its president. And in our country, we elected comic, yes, artist, but it's our choice. We want to see this person, yes. Another one, Putin demand demilitarization of Ukraine, country which annexed our territory, and then another one started war against Ukraine, and they demand demilitarization. I don't know, but it's completely awful, because where we are speaking about NATO, you know that NATO countries refuse entering of Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. Refusal started from 2028 year in Budapest, and from that time they didn't give us any chance to enter to NATO because of Russia, because of fear of Russia. And nowadays, NATO countries talk about that Ukraine couldn't enter to NATO because of Russia. And our president starting talking about neutrality of Ukraine, but we need some guarantees, because Ukraine in 1994 took Budapest Memorandum, where 5 countries guaranteed our country sovereignty and sovereignty. But Russia, one country which were amid these 5 countries, what started war against Ukraine. That's how we can took these wars from Russia, and how we can think that's true, and Russia can have some good things about Ukraine. It's not easy. So yes, Ukraine could have some compromise. Yes, and Ukraine wanted, our president also talked that we would like to speak about compromises, about peace, and so on. But Russia tried to use only ultimatum towards Ukraine. Do like we want. Do like we want. It's look at the countries, for example, South Korea and North Korea. That's 2 parts we demonstrate what Soviet Union gave to country, and how the US can develop another country. And Ukrainian people looking at development countries like European Union, where they have equality between each other, and we would like live with countries and communicate with countries. We can see us like equality country, not only like a colony, how Putin is looking at Ukraine. Putin told that Ukraine is not a country, it's not ethnicity, and so on. It's a problem because Russia is looking at Ukraine not how we would like to be, and how they should to look at sovereign country nowadays in 21st century.
Right. Thank you so much, Nataliya. Thank you. I appreciate both of your comments and on the peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, and particularly highlighting major aspects of the crisis, which is indeed a very traumatic experience for the citizens of Ukraine. I think let me come to Ambassador Malhotra. Ambassador Malhotra, you can respond to the discussion, but also I have a question for you. The question is, will the transatlantic unity last, and what impact will India face from this crisis, both challenges as well as fallout?
First of all, I would like to very briefly respond to the young lady Tetiana. I think I was not very clear in conveying my thoughts. Tetiana, I never said that Russia was justified in what it did. In fact, what I said, first of all, you talked about history, why I didn't go beyond 1990s. I didn't go beyond 1990s because I think the evolution of the situation only after 1990 has a direct link with what is happening today on the ground in Ukraine. There's no point in going beyond 1990, looking at how USSR was formed, how, before that the wars, First World War was fought, Ottoman Empire came down, Russian Empire came down. That would not serve. Fact of the matter is, what's happening today in Ukraine is because of what happened post 1990. That's first point. Second point is, I never said Russia is justified. I said Russia has perceptions of its security being threatened by NATO coming right up to its next door, and therefore has gone in for a violent reaction. And I said in so many words, this is where Russia has gone wrong, because through military means or through aggressions, if you want to achieve your objectives, that's not the right thing to do in the 21st century. You said Ukraine has already decided. When I say that Ukraine has to decide, it is in the today's context, Tetiana, that you have to take a decision based on real politics. Yes, I agree. Your constitution says that you will be big members of the European Union and you want to integrate with the Euro-Atlantic structures. Last 14 years, what progress has been made in this direction? Have you ever realized what kind of willingness or the seriousness the other side is showing in getting you incorporated into their structures? I leave it at that for you to sit and make a judgment about it. And so real politics in the context of what has happened today and where we have reached, that's what I said. You will have to take a decision how to create a situation, how to take some steps or so that this we can come out of this scenario and the peace prevails. So there's a ceasefire and then there's a final settlement. Soham, you said about this. Your question was the impact on India, right?
Yeah, both on the. If you can comment a bit about the transatlantic unity and how long it will. What do you see the future of it, as well as the impact on India, both?
Well, you see here also, if you go slightly a few years back, after the President Donald Trump came to power in America, his approach of America first and trying to tell the NATO members that America alone cannot fund for your security, you must be more forthcoming, you must be spending more, etc., had created a situation when the European allies had lost, confidence or trust in United States of America. And in a certain way, by Donald Trump getting out of climate change, Iran nuclear deal, and some other UN organizations, had created an impression that America's role as a global leader was diminishing. And this is what President Biden wants to reverse with his policy of America is back. So he's trying to do his level best to reunite the NATO countries. There is a difference of opinion. By the way, there is a difference of opinion within NATO countries also on whether Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine be given a NATO membership or not, and also on the quantum of sanctions and the type of sanctions, which some of my fellow panelists from Ukraine have also mentioned, that some have gone in for that SWIFT, getting Russia out of SWIFT, some have not gone. Similarly, on the question of European Union membership, so they are divided. So maybe, you never know, this could also be a Biden's attempt to unite the NATO countries in the face. When you have a common threat, then there is a tendency to, come together. If any country is attacked, all the opposition groups, usually as a rule, come under one umbrella to face the enemy. So this could be one attempt, but we really don't know how far this would continue. Because ultimately, if this kind of decisions, these kind of decisions are not going only to damage Russia or Ukraine, they have got geopolitical, the entire, global dimensions. There will be a setback to the economy worldwide. Then there is this oil and gas war. The natural resources war is also, going to accelerate. The Iran nuclear issue, which was almost about to be resolved, at least it was in the final stages of being resolved. There is a pause on it because Russia has decided to put a pause and come out with some other conditions. Because if Iran nuclear issue is resolved, Iran comes into the mainstream, sanctions are removed, and Iranian oil will come in the market, prices will come down, Russia will suffer. So there are a whole lot of things which are linked and interlinked. And the kind of rivalry between America and Russia doesn't suit India at all, because both of them are our strategic partners. We need modern technology, we need resources, we need transfer of technology, defense equipment. We want to collaborate, cooperate, at all levels, at every level, at all possible level with both the countries. And for that matter, with any country and all countries in the world. We believe in the multipolarity of the world also. We don't want America to be a unipolar world, or Russia and America to be bipolar, or China, America and Russia to be tripolar. So BRICS was formed on that basis. So we will be somehow or other, I mean, if American sanctions on Russia, and if they are very, want to implement it very strictly, then somewhere we will also get affected. Even our S-400 supplies from Russia have come under cloud in the past. We have somehow managed. Americans are also showing, some sort of, either to cover it up that we have not gone in wholeheartedly with them. They're trying to say they understand the situation, our relations with Russia and our compulsions of defense supplies. Still, we get about 60% of the spares are coming from Russia. So be that as may be, but as far as India is concerned, India would not try to find itself in a position where it has to choose between America and Russia. And there's no question of, choosing between Ukraine and Russia. As I said it in the beginning, this is a war between America and Russia. In my opinion, this is not a war between Ukraine. It is a war in the sense it is being fought on the Ukrainian soil, unfortunately, and Ukraine alone is suffering with some damage to Russia also. So this, the whole thing has got a lot of global implications, and many countries are likely to get affected by that. Stock markets keep coming down. It is having an impact on, already has impact on oil prices. Once oil, energy is expensive, everything becomes more expensive, inflation. And more importantly, then, sanctions may create problems between India and Russia on certain, like they did with Iran. Like we were not able to buy oil from them, although we kept telling America that we want to, to rely upon the dependable and the affordable sources of supply, which by that we actually meant Iran. So this is, we are living in a globalized kind of world. It's not just that it will impact, and Biden himself has said that there will be some adverse repercussions of these sanctions on America as well. And he is promising his own people that he will do everything to ensure that the impact is minimized, back home. Right. So, but I think for their larger plans and the larger designs, the two big players are adamant on doing what they are doing. And unfortunately, the rest of the world, and particularly Ukraine, is suffering from it. So I hope we are able to get out of this imbroglio sooner than later.
Right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Malhotra. I think India has been having contacts with both the Russians and the Ukrainians at the highest level. I think Prime Minister Modi has spoken twice to President Zelensky since the war has begun. So I think in this regard, let me request my colleague, Richa Kumaria, who is our research associate and executive assistant at Tillotoma Foundation, to make her observations, and also she has questions for the panelists.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. My first question is to Ms. Nataliya and Ms. Tetiana. Since we are analyzing the on-ground situation, my question relates to what has been the reaction of the neighboring countries around Ukraine, since more than 3 million people have now left the country. How welcoming have they been? And how safe are the civilian corridors actually? That would be my first question.
About 3 million of our people, it's women and children only, because men is banned of entering abroad. So women and children, they are safe, and all our neighbor countries are very helpful, and they try to do all the best that our women and children could feel safety in these countries. It's I can say that in this way they are very helpful. No problem with our children, with women. It's okay, but you know, Ukraine is a country of soul. Ukrainians, they are people which love this country. Our country is very peaceful, and since two World War, Ukraine lived very peacefully, and our country, Ukraine is very agricultural and a very countryside and very connected country, and it's very good to be refugee. It's very big. I couldn't say this problem, but very big. Make very bad feeling for our people because we like to live here, and it's yes, and I suppose that our women and our children can come back to Ukraine, and we will develop our country. It's not easy to go to flee relatives, your relatives and your houses. It's a very, very big problem. But thanks for our neighboring, they are helping us. Not only our neighboring. For example, Taiwan send a very of humanitarian supplies, and all countries of the world send money and medicine and clothes. That's okay. But we want to have peace, and we want to we want to ask all of you because when we will speak about this, that I think that it will be helpful for resolving this situation.
Thank you, Nit.
Just a follow-up question. When you were telling us about the on-ground situation, you mentioned how China could probably be the only Asian country that can influence Russia into stopping its actions. But if we flip the situation, how catastrophic or how dangerous do you think could be China supporting Russia? And then a related question to that, if that happens, my second question to Ambassador Malhotra, that if that happens, what could be the consequences for India?
When we are speaking about when we are speaking about Russia and the war, when we told about Russia also, because when Putin stayed with C and they promoted their vision of international order, it was start. Ukrainian people thinking about Ribbentrop and Molotov when war was started. Now, yes, China speaks that they didn't know about plan of the war, and they like to be a promoter of peace in our country. Yes, it's good signal, but we read information that Russia asked China for help, military help and economic help. It's not good, because when Russia will have military supplies, so Russia will use it against our civilians, against our children. And China embassy and China at all, and China government is know about situation in Ukraine. There are no any nationalists. There are no any big infrastructure which Russia should to destroy. They know that Russia destroyed schools, about 600 schools destroyed completely, and it's a problem. And China as a global power, as a member of UN, and as a member of UN should to use this power to stop Russia, not to help Russia. Yes, China tried to use this conflict again between the US and between Russia to resolve its problem with Taiwan and so on. But now we are speaking about civilians, and they should to show that they are not helping Putin, but they try to stop very big problem that can start a second war in the world. It's my mind.
Right. Thank you. Tetiana, would you like to respond to that question?
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm not the expert on the relations with Asian countries, so I would refrain from commenting in the sphere where I have no good expertise.
Okay, thank you, Richa.
I will leave it to Nataliya.
And Ambassador, did you get the question? Her part of the question was directed to you also. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, if I recall correctly, the question was the implications of Russia and China coming together for India, right? Well, the fact of the matter is that relations between Russia and China have been on the ascendancy for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And the reason is because both China and Russia are being pushed against the wall by the Western, nations. America, on the pretext of that, in the context of the COVID-19, the kind of anti-China campaign which started in the United States of America, and the formation of the four-country quadrilateral, grouping, Quad, India, Australia, Japan, and the United States of America. So that's on one side. And with Russia, we already know that for one reason or the other, they have been putting sanctions on Russia for quite some time now. Their relations with Russia have also not been good. So, these, and then there are real opportunities between China and Russia to cooperate and collaborate, particularly in the energy sector. So both pull and push factors have brought Russia and China together. Now, how does it impact India? Now, India's policy is that we are not opposed to making friendship with one country, but it is never at the cost of the other country, our relations with the other country. This is what we explained to Russia also, when at some point of time, or very briefly, Russia got the impression that we were tilting towards America, and it was at the cost of time-tested friendship, etc., etc. What we expect is that you can choose your friends, so long as it does not impinge on our national security interests, particularly. If Russia-China relationship does not have any impact on our security considerations or any other national interest, be that economic or security, we have no problems in coming if these two countries come together. After all, that's our policy. We have decided to deal with America, deal with Russia. We decided to deal with Middle East, also with Israel. And that's how we look at it. I think that's what it is. And having said that, I would like to add one thing, that this prima facie, this apparent bolhami between Russia and China is also superficial to a certain extent. There is a mistrust and distrust deficit between the two countries also. And it's at best you can call it as an excess of convenience under the given circumstances. Russia has similar apprehensions from China in Central Asia, which it has from America and NATO in the European part. So Russia would never like China's influence in Central Asia, which again is Russia's backyard. to grow to the extent that at some point of time, when its relations with China, go sour, then China can use it against Russia. So this, at the end of the day, this is, how you have to look at this, growing proximity between the two countries. But the crux of the matter is, from India's perspective, if you don't become a threat to our security, our national interest, it's fine with us. This is what has happened with Sri Lanka also. At some point of time, it looked like the Sri Lanka was going the China way in a manner that China may come and sit next to our borders and become a security threat. And but the latest, the government which is now in power in Sri Lanka has made it clear in so many words that when it would come to the question of economic cooperation, they will definitely go ahead and deal with China and any other country. But when it will come to the questions of the security, it will be India first, India's security first. This is on record, public, and during the private conversations also. So I think this is how the whole international order should work. That two of you can't join hands to become a threat to a third country's, national interest, economic or otherwise. I hope I've made myself clear.
Thanks. Richa.
Thank you for your response, Ambassador. My final question is Ms. Tetiana. What would you think is the role of this historical and sort of say national consciousness in Russia's actions, that, this nostalgia for the Soviet Union, that once all of this was one entity? Do you think that kind of historical consciousness plays any role in what Russia is doing today?
Well, thank you very much for your question. Of course, I think that it does play a role, because things, especially in international relations and in history, they evolve and develop, and they do not start out of anything. So if you take any year as a reference point for anything, you should understand that the things developed on that year because some other previous events took place, and etc. So this mentality was not changing in Russia for years throughout the history. And if you know that this hate to Ukrainian and attempts to colonize it were going on since Kiev and Rus, when Moscow appeared as an entity and as a political entity. Then many nearby territories were occupied, and this Russian Empire emerged. And this Russian Empire was trying to take as much land as possible. Unfortunately, unluckily, Ukraine was on its border, so we didn't choose for that, but that was like that. And since that time, each and every historical period, Russia tried to get Ukraine, and Ukraine never wanted and never was and never wanted to be a part of Russia. And this develops throughout the centuries. So what we have now is basically, we say that today is a 20th day of the war, which taken place already for 8 years and lasts for centuries, because for centuries we have these relations, and everything what we just want Russia to leave us in peace. And we are not against Russia. I would say that Russian actions push Ukraine towards the West, because Ukraine was stuck between two blocks, Western and Russia, and it was acquiring its status of neutrality. Budapest Memorandum was guaranteeing the security, was providing security guarantees. And I think if Russia would not take such an aggressive actions, it would last for a long time. But then Russia started to to take these aggressive actions, and at some moment Ukrainians were fed up with this, and they just don't want to be looked at as younger brothers, because Ukraine is not a younger brother. It's already an independent country with its own sovereignty. So this mentality lives very strongly in Russia now. And if you follow what Putin says, and what if you was listening to the recently, like months ago, it was a big speech of Putin, and there he said that Ukraine was created by Lenin or something like that, and this is like a president of a country who is saying this. So what other expectations could be? And if you know who is Putin, do you know what is KGB? So the president of the country was a former KGB official, and so if you trace this narrative and this mentality, it's absolutely it's like a substance of this country. If the mentality was other, then we would the things would develop in another way. But if Russia shows this attitude towards Ukraine, I think Ukraine has only two ways. It can choose a way of becoming a North Korea, or it can show its willingness to stand for values of normal, civilized, because Russia is not civilized. What is they doing? It's not a civilization, it's absolutely barbaric. So Ukraine has these two options, and obviously that Ukraine don't want to be in a company with barbaric, authoritarian, terroristic country.
One word. That Putin thought that he knows Ukraine very well, because he saw because Russian people looking at Ukraine at like as Ukrainians are the same with Russian, but it's not true. But and it was the first reason why Russia now couldn't win Ukraine. Ukrainian people is very self-organized. We can live without president because it's our history. We had in our history Caucasus. Caucasus, it's very brave people who couldn't live under any imperial. And look, now I'm living in the countryside. A lot of people from other parts, from Kiev and other parts of Ukraine, are living here in relatives and so on. Do you know what we are doing now? We are preparing food for our army. All people, children. We are preparing food for our products. We're using our money to help to our military. All people in Ukraine now working for the win, because we don't need that our president can call that you should go, you should do. No, Ukrainians lived, I don't know if you remember, in 2014, when President Yanukovych goes to Russia, and parliament was absence of the government in Ukraine. In this situation, people in their places started to work for Ukraine, and we lived about 1 month without government. And in this period, Russia annexed some part of Ukraine because use this situation. But people worked for the win, and we won in this situation. And now we are working the same. That lots of people, children use this money. For example, my son used money and gave money for fighting for military. It's because we love our country and because we are very free people. Thank you for the interest. I think that lack of interaction between Indian experts and Ukrainian experts, it's a problem, because we didn't know many of each other and we couldn't understand situation, for example, sometimes. And I would like to ask you about about our interaction in the future, and thank you for your understanding and for support for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richa. So I think I thank especially Nataliya and Tetiana for joining us at this discussion. Thank you so much. I appreciate your presence here in such a critical situation. And I think the situation on ground in Ukraine is very critical as people face a terrible humanitarian crisis. I also thank Ambassador Achal Malhotra for his participation in this event. I also thank Richa for her participation. Thank you all. I think we conclude this discussion here. Thank you so much for joining.